In today's show, I'll be talking about this UFC main event, Arnold Allen taking on Calvin Kattar in what is going to be a really interesting battle between pressure and precision. Kattar moving forward, trying to put that boxing pressure on Arnold Allen, and Arnold Allen backing up, trying to find his opportunities for that left hand and that level change. Stay tuned for the analysis. Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. This one is for this weekend's UFC main event between Calvin Kattar, the very tough Calvin Kattar, and the very exciting prospect Arnold Allen. This is a huge opportunity for Arnold Allen. Of course, Dan Hooker was a big opportunity as well, but Dan Hooker's a bit of an unknown commodity with him moving around weight classes and his performances being guts and glory, which is Calvin Kattar is going to be very similar, but Calvin Kattar, of course, is a highly ranked, consistent contender in this division. And, a couple of places above Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen's currently sitting at number 6. Calvin Kattar's at number 5. For whatever reason, Chan Sung Jung and Arnold Allen are both ranked at number 6. So one must be 7. Arnold Allen's in sixth position. I don't know. There's a couple of spots difference between the two of them right now in the rankings. Look, this is Arnold Allen's opportunity to get another big name on his record. Ideally another finish, but that's going to be incredibly tough against Calvin Kattar. And, move towards the rankings. It's his performances that stand out. Arnold's a very quiet, very humble kid, but his skills and his physical attributes, his conditioning, and the depth of his game as well, which we're not really seeing enough of at the moment. And I think we will do against Calvin Kattar because he won't go away quietly. I was surprised he was able to stop Dan Hooker so quickly. That was a standout performance for Arnold Allen. The other one being his front choke over Mads Burnell. That for me was another big standout performance from Arnold Allen, mainly because he was probably down on points. Mads Burnell was boxing him up pretty good, and it was a very competitive match. And Mads Burnell's incredibly tough. It was a shame to see him released from the UFC after that fight, but nevertheless, the performance really stood out to me because it was a very sneaky choke that could be really useful against Calvin Kattar, because he may decide he wants to wrestle in this one. Which I'll get into in a little while. Let me do tail of the tape first before I move on. I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Don't sneeze. There's a book, I never know how to say it, Hagakure by Yamamoto Tsunemoto. It's one of my favourite books. I've got through about 10 copies because I always end up giving mine away to someone and buying a new one. Really worth a read. There's all different kinds of weird little paragraphs in there where it talks about, like different ways to deal with a sneeze so as not to be impolite in public and stuff. A bit of a tangent for you, but it's worth a book, worth checking out that book. I didn't mention our sponsor. We're sponsored by Rigor. Good friends of ours, Rigor. They've been supporting the Full Reptile Creative and the collective for a long time. I've been driving around in one of their awesome Mercedes Vitos for a while, as have the Raptors, and we love them. They're great. We appreciate Rigor for supporting us. They're very invested in grassroots mixed martial arts. They support the English IMAF team. Just a great company all around, and we appreciate their support. And yes, they are supporting this podcast. So check them out. Check out their awesome vehicles. Electric now, that's the way forward. That's the next move for me. I'm going to get into the electric vehicles through Rigor. So give them a look out if you're looking for commercial vehicles. And thank you for the support, Rigor. Okay. Tail of the tape. So Calvin Kattar, we have a record of 23-6. Arnold Allen is 18-1. That one loss being a decision loss back in his old, I think it was in his Cage Warriors days. Marcin Vorosek, another tough individual. Cage Warriors 69. That was a 3-round fight and he lost by unanimous decision. I have watched that, but it's been a while. Needless to say, obviously, he's on quite a streak at the moment. 9-fight win streak with the submission over Alan Omar in his UFC debut.
That was an interesting fight to call. Alan Omer against Arnold Allen. You just can't use the name Allen. It's like that clip with what were they? Some kind of mammal standing on a prairie going, Allen, Allen, Allen. That's exactly what commentary sounded like for that one. The Mads Bennell fight, which of course I've mentioned, decision wins over some incredibly tough people like Gilbert Melendez and Nick Lentz. A really impressive shutout performance for me against Sadiq Youssef. Just landed the better quality shots. Nice head kick, rocked him. Very patient, very mature performance from him, and then just came into UFC London and blasted Dan Hooker out of the water. On the other side, of course, Calvin Kattar. He's been stopped once. He was caught in a rear naked choke a long time ago. What was it? Yeah, Elite XC Prime Time, May 31st, 2008. That's the only time he's been stopped. Aside from that, he's got split decisions and unanimous decisions. His most recent one, of course, being that split decision against Josh Emmett. Before that, beating Giga Chikadze in a really impressive performance, which could be useful going into this one with Arnold Allen being a southpaw and being far more cautious than some of his other opponents. He lost to Josh Emmett by split decision. They both got beaten up and bloodied in that fight. It was very close. Max Holloway, of course, just absolutely did a number on him. The similarity with those two fighters is that they both are either happy to stand in the pocket or they want to push forward. Giga Chikadze was moving away and trying to create space for his kicks, and Calvin Kattar was just kind of marching forward, just getting inside that range. He could also do that to Arnold Allen, and I think that was a good test run for this fight. However, there are some additional facets to Arnold Allen's game, of course, that front choke being one of them, which may be a deterrent in Calvin Kattar closing him down too aggressively. The performance that stands out for me, my favourite of Calvin Kattar's, was against Jeremy Stevens with that the elbows as he was moving into range. Now, it's going to be difficult to get Arnold Allen to come crashing onto something like that because he is a far more patient fighter. He's very smart. This is the first time he's fighting over 5 rounds as well, so that is something to consider. I think he's going to be, supremely conditioned, absolutely ready for 5 rounds. He's training at Renegade alongside Leon Edwards and Fabian Edwards and, a lot of good guys over there. Jai Herbert, Aiden Lee, really, really tough mat full of people. He's commuting, he's making sure he's there on the mat with those guys, dedicating his whole day to it. He's an incredibly committed individual. Spent a lot of time at TriStar as well. I think he's ready for this opportunity to step up into a main event over 5 rounds, and I think Calvin Kattar is the ideal person to really put the pressure on Arnold Allen and see how he deals with it, especially over 5 rounds, because I expect him to get stronger as the fight goes on. And Calvin Kattar is absolutely going to last 5 rounds because, what is it? His last 4 fights have been 5-round decisions. And the other, think back to the Magomed Sharapov fight. That could have been a 5-round fight because it was the main event, but because was it a short notice? Magomed Sharapov decided he would fight 3 rounds instead of 5. And I remember at the end of the fight thinking to myself, what, if this was 5 rounds, I think Calvin would have probably beaten him. Because, Magomed Sharapov was starting to slow down, and Calvin Kattar's game does work better over 5 rounds, unless, of course, you fight Max Holloway, but that's a different story. His game does work better over 5 rounds because his pressure takes a while to kind of get to his opponent. Same as Peter Yan. I think if we'd have watched his fight against Sean O'Malley over 5 rounds, that could have quite easily been far more dominant for Yan, a decision, instead of it being, a close split and going the opposite way. I think Yan would have probably come on really strong in those last 2 rounds, just like Calvin Kattar does if he's not taken too much damage early. So if I'm Arnold Allen, I'm thinking about moving away. He's a southpaw, so he's very good at kind of backing up and creating space, and Calvin Kattar is going to be marching in this direction just like he was against Giga Chikadze. In fact, I've got my little notepad here. Where's my octagon? There it is. Look at that. It appears out of nowhere. So let's go. What's it going to be? Blue corner for Arnold Allen because he's lower in the rankings, right? So Arnold Allen is going to be moving in this direction, and he's going to be trying to pull Calvin Kattar onto his left hand. Calvin Kattar is going to be circling and he's going to be pressuring, but he's going to be pressuring into this line. He's going to be following this line. He's not going to be wanting to cut across because then he's walking into the power side of Arnold Allen. You've got to think, with Arnold Allen being a southpaw, as he's moving in this direction, if you step across that centre line in his range, he's got that straight left or he's got his kicks. Or, of course, you're squaring yourself up to a level change. So what we're going to see is we're going to see Calvin Kattar pressuring and following Arnold Allen all the way around. There's going to be a bit of a game where they're trying to stay on that same line, but try and keep line one another up. And this is where the fence comes into play. This is why the octagon is different to a ring, because in a ring you can get stuck in the corner, and it's a far different fight when it's southpaw v orthodox. The other thing you have to remember as well is that Calvin Kattar is very good at stepping through and switching his stance to pressure. He does a little kind of high jog, which it does leave him vulnerable for low kicks and takedowns, and I do think Arnold Allen will be seeing that and reading it, but it also is a good way for Calvin Kattar to maintain pressure. Keep on the front foot of your opponent and keep pushing them back, especially, when he's fighting Giga Chikadze, he had to get close to him because you don't want to be on the end of those kicks. He was also smart enough to stay away from the power hand of Giga Chikadze as he was pressuring him, so staying on the outside and sweeping him into the fence like this. The thing that you'll notice Arnold Allen is very good at is he kind of like leans his head a little bit. He makes it seem vulnerable. He makes it seem like his head is there to hit. Then his opponent fires a straight shot and he steps hard on his back leg and then fires back with his straight left. It's a slip return. It's a nice little trigger that he's got, and because he's forcing people to chase him and they get more frustrated because he's not engaging and they start trying to cut him off, that slip return becomes easier and easier for him. His footwork and his head movement are going to be key in this one, because we know that Calvin Kattar is going to move forward, and we know that he does get bloodied and beaten up a bit. We know, you look at that last fight against Josh Emmett, they were both bloodied in the last round, and he had the swelling under his eye. There is damage to be worked on Calvin Kattar's face right in the first round, and over 5 rounds that can also work against him. Arnold Allen's, he's got a baby face. He's not been in these really hard battles that this could potentially be. We expected Dan Hooker to be a real tough fight for him, but he was just so impressive in that. And, you also look at their ages as well. Arnold Allen's 28 and Calvin Kattar's 34. And 34 with, a couple of bangers on his record, a couple of really tough fights. Like that Max Holloway could count as 3 or 4 fights on somebody else's record. And, we're also looking at Arnold Allen arriving in a situation where now he's got the 9-fight win streak and the confidence that's got, alongside the Renegade team who have just brought a world championship back to Birmingham, which is, the team that have taken Arnold Allen in. And, it's his first main event. He's got Calvin Kattar, who he knows he can hit because he's very hittable. And I don't doubt for a second he's got the conditioning to be able to push and to work. Okay, where was I with the stats? So the stats are, quite interesting, really, for a few different reasons, but all lean towards what we would expect to see with the stats if we keep in mind the style of the fights that these guys have. And of course, you're going to say the same thing in the comments that you said in the Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev stats. Yeah, but the stats don't matter because the level of opponents is not the same. And I do agree with you. But at the same time, if I've got stats, I'm going to look at them because I can gain something, even if it's just an insight into that individual alone. Sometimes comparing the stats, it doesn't give us a very fair read, but it can kind of set us up for what we expect. Charles Oliveira did get hit more than Islam Makhachev, and Makhachev was very good at getting his head off the centre line, didn't take too many punches. That was what the stats read. It's sometimes you have to take the stats, of course, for what they are, but you also can't discount somebody because they've not had the same opportunities yet. Arnold Allen, 19 fights into his career, 28 years old. Calvin Kattar, 29 fights into his career, 34 years old. In the next few years, you've got to think Arnold Allen's going to have another 10 fights. And within those 10 fights, if he keeps going the way he is, he's going to get the likes of the Max Holloways and the Giga, of course, the Max Holloways, yeah, but it will be, the other guys will be the top of the division because he'll be in amongst them if he's not the world champion, because he may well get to that situation. UFC stats have got Calvin Kattar being 3 inches taller, he's also got a 2-inch reach advantage, but because of the way that he fights, I think it kind of nullifies his height and reach advantage. I don't really think he uses it too much. I think he works so close to his opponents that the only real benefit is if they're starting to pull away from him and he's able to catch them on the end of his shots. I think his elbows are one of his best facets at close range, and we saw them spinning elbows against his last couple of opponents, and it's really something that he's starting to dine out on. And again, if he's pressuring Arnold Allen and Allen is circling away from him, drifting around this way, if Calvin Kattar comes in and starts pressuring in this direction and he's circling Arnold Allen, and Arnold comes out of his corner and he's pressured up against the fence, at some point this pressure is going to get to the point where Calvin Kattar is going to overtake him. And then we might see Arnold Allen shifting back in this direction. That's when you're going to start seeing Calvin Kattar dropping those spinning elbows in. Like, the pressure is really valuable for Calvin Kattar because he's got 91% takedown defense. It's the best amongst active. It's the best amongst active featherweights at the moment, if I remember correct. Yeah, 91.3% takedown defense. Arnold Allen's is 76.5, which is 5th in the division. But what is interesting is he's 3rd in the division for takedown success with 50%. And that is because he's very good at making people walk onto it because they're chasing him. I won't be surprised if Arnold Allen does level change, but I also think that Calvin Kattar, if he gets frustrated and he feels like he's chasing, he might also try and get Arnold backed up against the fence and level change into him as well. And that's where Arnold Allen's ninja choke comes in, that front choke that he's got, that he uses so well. So when it comes to their striking stats, of course, Calvin Kattar has got a higher output. He throws more, he's busier, he's more aggressive, he throws in combinations, slipping on the inside, coming up with his uppercuts, beautiful boxing on the inside. Kind of got the boxing defense of someone that should be wearing bigger gloves though, and I think that's why he gets blooded quite a lot. Arnold Allen for me has got a more modern, more considered way of striking for mixed martial arts, which is probably partly down to his time with Faraz, because Faraz is very kind of shot placement and timing, and you can see that influence in Arnold Allen's game, the way that he moves, the way that he kind of snipes at people. I think he could be absolute nightmares for Calvin Kattar because he could keep sniping at him on the way in, keep circling off, rolling out to the side and changing his direction, circling back the opposite way. And Kattar might start to get frustrated and level change into the fence and go straight into that front choke. Or he might start trying to take Arnold Allen down, and we might see Arnold taking the center of the octagon. But I do think that if Calvin Kattar incorporates wrestling into his game, it might start to squeeze Arnold Allen into those later rounds, working at a pace which is, not ideal over 5 rounds. We know Calvin Kattar can do it. We don't know if Arnold Allen can do it. And with the pressure of it being 5 rounds and the pressure that Calvin Kattar can put on someone, it might be a good game plan for him. So the UFC stats have got Calvin Kattar with a higher striking output, 5.19 strikes landed per minute compared to 3.3 for Arnold Allen. Now, I think that is quite a good example of their striking style. And of course, Arnold Allen does have a lower striking output, but he also has a higher striking accuracy. Calvin Kattar throws volume and lands what lands. He doesn't throw a combination to land everything, but because he throws combinations, he's able to find his way through people's guard. As I said, Arnold Allen's a bit more of a sharpshooter. But then strikes absorbed per minute, this is kind of where you got to throw it out the window for Calvin Kattar, because he's at 7.1, and you've got to think the majority of those stats strikes are affected by the Max Holloway fight, which was, hang on a minute, 445 strikes. Which is absurd considering, Giga Chikadze landed 128 strikes, Josh Emmett landed 107, Dan Ige landed 84, Jeremy Stevens landed 57, Max Holloway landed 445. That's where stats really get affected. Same as Sean O'Malley against Martino. He had 230 strikes in that fight. It massively affected his knockdown ratio. Striking defense, again, of course, is going to be higher for Arnold Allen. He just hasn't had the Max Holloway fight, so he's not taking all those shots that Calvin Kattar has. And also his fighting style doesn't kind of suggest that he's that vulnerable to those kind of fight strikes anyway. He'd much rather back up and use his footwork and head movement and wrestling if he finds himself under that amount of pressure. takedown average per 15 minutes as good evidence. 0.4 for Calvin Kattar, 1.4 for Arnold Allen. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see Calvin Kattar clinching and holding and elbowing and working for takedowns up against the fence, even if it's just a method of making Arnold Allen feel those last couple of rounds, if and when they get there. Takedown accuracy, as I said, for Arnold Allen, third in the division at 50%, 29% for Calvin Kattar, but 91% takedown defense. And then Arnold Allen with his 0.4% sub attempts. Should be a fun fight, this one. I think if Arnold Allen, if he keeps pulling Calvin Kattar and keeps nailing him with that left hand, picking him off with his jab and using his footwork and his head movement, keep rolling out into that pocket and being aware of that spinning elbow. And then if Kattar gets frustrated and level changes in, then he can start working that neck attack. For Calvin Kattar, I think cutting off the cage is going to be a key for him in this. Even though he's got the height and reach advantage, I think closing distance down is wise. And I think stepping through with his stances and throwing punches in volume is going to be a benefit. Also punching himself into the clinch as opposed to into a level change, and making Arnold wrestle up against the fence. Try and make him tired. And the one other thing I will say, which he used against Giga Chikadze well, was that snapping, nasty, probing front kick to the face. It's very intrusive. It's very draining on your cardiovascular system. And as I said, Arnold is, he's the younger guy, but he's not done 5 rounds. I don't question his conditioning, but anxiety and pressure and Calvin Kattar being on your case from the opening seconds of the fight and not leaving you alone until the bell rings, that can be absolutely draining. One other thing that I will talk you through before I leave is my knockdown average or knockdown ratio or whatever you want to call it. So Calvin Kattar in his UFC career, red. Oh, no, that's an E, isn't it? Messed it up already. No, it's not an E, it's an A. Oh dear, there we go. Okay, Kattar. So he has landed 966 strikes, 5 knockdowns, which gives him a knockdown ratio of 1. Let me put it here. 193 KD. Arnold Allen, we'll switch him to blue. Allen. Arnold Allen has landed 473 strikes in his UFC career with 3 knockdowns, giving him a knockdown average, a knockdown ratio of 157 per KD. So again, volume for Calvin Kattar. He's getting to people, but he's throwing a volume of punches compared to Arnold Allen, who is landing and hurting with a lesser amount of punches thrown by a decent amount. You're talking, 40 strikes, a bit less than 40 strikes. Calvin Kattar's got 10 knockouts on his record out of 23 wins, 2 submissions, 1 guillotine, 1 rear naked choke, both before the UFC. Arnold Allen, of course, has got submissions in the UFC. We've got the rear naked choke and the triangle outside. We've got the guillotine in his UFC debut, and we've got the front choke against Mads Burnell. 6 knockouts on his record as well. This should be a lot of fun, this fight. I don't expect anything less from Calvin Kattar, and I expect big things from Arnold Allen. I think this could be a bit of a turning point for both of these guys. Maybe Arnold Allen now starting to take that step up into that very upper echelon of the featherweight division, and start talking about those really big fights. Especially if Volkanovski is going to move up and fight Makhachev, that might leave the top of the division rather vacant for an interim fight, an interim title. Of course, I'm not a fan of interim titles, but they do like to hang gold on main events. And you look at Arnold Allen, if he takes out Calvin Kattar, who's got some weight and branding to his name, he puts himself in an interesting group of people with the likes of Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega, Max Holloway. Big names, big names. Calvin Kattar's a big name. Max Holloway's a big name. That's a co-main event pay-per-view type of situation for an interim title. And that's the big time at that point. I mean, this is good. This is a first main event for him. This is a big opponent. But, if you're looking at leveling up and the next step is not the title, then you've got to think that's what I'd be aiming for next if I was Arnold Allen. And I would have that plan in mind. I would have picked one of these guys already, the one I want to match up with most. And Max Holloway, to be honest. I mean, I know it will be a horrendously difficult fight for him, but the other guys could potentially be just as dangerous, and they don't carry the same kind of weight as a Max Holloway. You beat Max Holloway and you're effectively the interim champ anyway, even if they don't put a belt on you. Oh. Okay, enjoy these fights. Thank you to Rigor for sponsoring this podcast, and I will see you next. Oh, and like and subscribe. I'm starting to remember. See you next time.